Answer the question, your English teacher says. I thought I did, you reply in your own head as you look through your feedback. Why is it that English teachers are always telling you guys to make sure that you're answering the question when you feel like you're doing it the whole time? And why is it when it comes to the analytical essay sack and then getting ready for section A of the English exam, teachers are so big on this idea of make sure you answer the question fully? And how can you answer a question better than someone else if you've gone along and given a response to it? How is it that we can do more than just simply answering the question? Today, I'm going to take you through 6 different ways that questions are asked. It's not every single question that's ever been put to a student across the last few years of the exam, but it gives you a really good general idea of how the examiners generally put questions to VCE students. I'm going to look at each 6 of these things and I'm going to give you tips and advice about how you can approach them and the ways that you need to be looking at them so that you can be getting the most out of your response. And now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you may have seen the one about Section A success. And I've said to you there that there is a difference between a student that proves a question right and a student that really jumps in and resolves the topic, that really gets in and shows a full understanding of what that topic is saying and not only answers the question, but also gets to some new ideas and some new ways of thinking in the way in which they eventually arrive at that answer. And I'll come back to that quite a bit throughout today. But I want to show you the different ways because often this is something that can get students a little bit anxious and a little bit worried about certain things. And so if you watch till the end of this video, you'll notice that I'm going to show you all the different ways that it's generally asked and give you tips and strategies to help you do the best on each of them every single time one of them comes up. And so we have this first style here where we have quote. And obviously there, I'm not going to do these text-based. I'm just going to give you a general sense of what the question would look like. To what extent is this view supported by the author's text? And so the first thing there that students often ask is, will I get penalised if I don't use the quote that's in the question? And the answer to that is no. There is no tick box that says, well, they did a really good job of resolving the topic and getting to some really great insightful thought and having this really great essay, but we got to take marks off because they didn't actually mention the quote. Of course, it is in your best interest to use that quote and why it's there because, of course, if it's being used, then it's giving the sense of what the question is asking. Generally, if it's followed by to what extent is this view supported by the author's text, we've got to understand that that's really getting to the author's message, the author's view being supported. And so you've really got to have a think about exactly what that quote means. Take a deep breath. Take it on face value, but then think, okay, what else is being said through this quote? What else is being explored and what else can I say about the author's views and values and ideas of their novel or play or whatever it might have been that is being brought up in this quote? The idea of the quote is that it's not there to limit you. It's actually there to give you some ideas in which you can go further. Of course, it does ask to what extent. And so anytime we see the word extent, you need to think about it being on a line, an idea on a line like this, with fully agreeing at one end and fully disagreeing at the other, and you need to decide where you are on that line. You don't want to be saying things like, I'm all the way over here on one end of a line or something like that, but rather you need to be distinct and clear with what exactly you believe about the idea that you're getting forward. And this is key to answering any essay question, really. You don't want to get to the end of your essay and suggest that, well, I've looked at this idea and I've shown a whole bunch of things about it, but I don't know. You want to be getting to the end of it saying, I've explored all the different dynamics of this idea. I've looked at all the different things that the author says about all of these ideas. And at the end of it all, I'm coming home to this clear contention. And this is what I'm saying. So that strong sense of purpose in the essay underlines all of the advice that I'm going to put forward to you today. Idea number 2. We have a general idea put to us, and it's just there in the inverted commas. It's not an actual quote. It's not evidence from the text itself. It's just a proposition that the examiners have come up with. It's just a way of thinking about the text. And then they put it to you really bluntly and really clearly. Do you agree? And so, of course, by being asked, do you agree, it is prompting you to make sure that you have a strong response. It's not asking to what extent do you agree and asking you to fall somewhere on the line. It's asking if you do fully agree with it or not. Remember, it's okay to disagree, but through disagreeing, you've got to be able to explain why and still show that line of thought and that thinking about the idea that'll let you arrive at that idea of fully disagreeing with that proposition. It is not okay to disagree with the proposition and then go off and write the essay that you want. It is not an invitation for you to say, actually, no, I don't agree, so I want to go off and write an essay about something else. If the idea has been put there in that proposition, in the way that it's been put to you, in that bold sort of stance, you need to be able to respond to that and see that as the topic of your essay. Whilst you need to arrive ultimately at a sense of agreement with the proposition or disagreement, of course, you can't just be that black and white in saying yes or no. And another small little tip with this, I really don't want to see the word I agree or I disagree, or I don't want to see a rewrite of the proposition in the introduction, almost word for word. I want you to work with that text and I want you to work with the proposition and get to your own sense of a response to it. So this is where things get that little bit frustrating, I understand, for students, because you're probably sitting there now saying, well, he's told us that we have to agree or disagree, but he's also said that we shouldn't write the word agree or disagree or just rewrite the proposition word for word. So what do we do? As always, it's about coming back to a strong sense of resolution. The only difference here is that it's not about to what extent. You've got to pick one side or the other. Through your journey of writing your essay and arriving at one point of disagreement or agreement, you are allowed to look at the idea and all the different facets of it, but you must make sure that you come home to that idea of agreement or disagreement with it. A lot of times with questions like this, students ask, well, can I just have 2 paragraphs for agree and 1 for disagree? And whilst I like and I encourage the idea of looking at all sides of an issue, you need to make sure that you're doing it in a way where you're still getting to a strong sense of resolution. You can't contradict yourself with one of your paragraphs and just undo everything else that you've said. It's okay to look at the full idea. It's okay to look at how else it may be interpreted, but just make sure that you've always got those sentences in there that are drawing you back to saying, however, ultimately, this is how I've interpreted this text. You don't want to have an essay that's 2 paragraphs one way, 1 paragraph the other, and then just sort of says at the end, I don't know. You've always got to be moving towards that sense of resolution. This next one's a really, really important one because quite often on the end of year exam, students will get asked a question that has the word and in it. And so it might look something like this. The text reveals that idea and idea are powerful in shaping lives. So let's just put some generic theme words in there. Say it would be, the text reveals that heroism and leadership are powerful in shaping lives. It's one of those ones where you need to take a deep breath and remember that there are 2 key ideas that are put there, and that after it, it will have something like, powerful in shaping lives. Too often students see these things, and whether it's the nerves of the exam or whether it's the fact that they maybe haven't prepared as well as they could have, they see one key word like heroism or something like that and they go, right, here we go, I'm just going to write this essay on that. Take your time, remember that the word and is there and that you need to address the whole question. If, with my example that I brought up about heroism and leadership, you may have written the greatest essay on leadership that has ever existed when it came to your text, but if you haven't looked at the other dynamic of the question that was also talking about heroism, you haven't addressed the full topic, and that's going to limit how far you can be rewarded come the end of your exam. So make sure if the word and is used that you're getting there and looking at both ideas, and that you're not just looking at them as, okay, there's the 2 ideas, I've just got to write about them. You will be asked a question about them. And so when it says are powerful in shaping lives, that has to be a part of your response. You can't just look at the ideas and say, okay, it just says talk about them, because it doesn't say that. It doesn't say idea and idea discuss. It actually has further questioning to it. And that idea of being powerful in shaping lives is that last element to this question. And quite often that will separate a lot of students. And we'll have a lot of students in that mid-range who have just written essays about, okay, here's the topic and I've gone for it. And the students that really show that deeper thought and insight and ability to really resolve the question in great depth and detail are the ones that have remembered that final tag about being powerful in shaping lives and having that being a part of their response as well. And question number 4 is a really key one. And you'll see here that it says, how does novel explore the? And it can go on there and it can talk about an idea or whatever it might be. But what's going to follow that idea of how does the text do whatever it does, is going to be similar to some of the other ideas that would be put to you in the other questions. The one thing you've got to remember about this type of question, though, is that first word. It's asking how. It's not saying, here's an idea, discuss. It's saying, how does the novel explore this idea or explore this concept or whatever it might be? So therefore, you've got to be able to talk about construction of text. You've got to be able to talk about the author's intent. You've got to be able to talk about things that the author has done in order to be able to get to this idea that is there. If you get asked a question with the word how, make sure that you don't ignore it. Similar to the other advice that I've given with the other questions, too often students see the key idea that's being proposed in the question and just think, well, okay, it's an essay on that, so I'm just going to write that essay, rather than thinking about what exactly they're being asked, which is to say, how is this idea explored? And so there is then obviously that opportunity that comes with being able to show your understanding of what the author or the playwright or the poet or the filmmaker have done in order to get that idea across. So if you see the word how, make sure that your response is engaged with looking at that idea of the construction of text, the structural elements, the things done by the creator in order to get their idea across. Number 5 is a question that I get an awful lot, and it is that students often say to me, well, what does it mean when it says discuss at the end of a question? Because if we take that at its face value, it just means, well, just start talking about it. Of course, just like with all the other questions, discuss means show an understanding of the idea, show that you have a holistic understanding of the idea or the character or whatever it is that's being brought up in the question, but make sure you come to some sense of resolution. And so when you see the word discuss, I don't want you to be stressed out and I don't want you to worry about it. All it's saying to you is, like on its face value, discuss the idea that's being brought here. But the one thing that you need to make sure that you have at the end of it is that sense of resolution or that sense of conclusion, that sense of having discussed all of these ideas, ultimately, this is the point that I'm going to make. It's a good thing for it to be that little bit open-ended for you. It's a good thing that you've got the capacity to be able to look at the idea in all of its complexity, but it just needs to be a case of you getting back to that strong sense of purpose with your essay and looking at it in a manner where you say, I've looked at all of it, and ultimately this is what I am saying in response to that idea. And whilst this last question may not be as common word for word across the last few years of the exam, you will see questions like this, where it says something like, what is more important than an idea for characters of the text? And the reason that I've put something like this in is because it brings up this idea of, well, there's been an idea or a theme or a character or something like that that's been brought up, but it's actually asked what's more important, or is that the most important thing? And just like with the do you agree questions, it's important that you don't just dismiss the topic that's been brought up there. And you'll notice that I have sort of interchanged the terms topic and question in today's video. And the idea behind that is to get you used to a question has a topic, and that topic needs to be resolved. And so if we have, like, for example, with this question, what is more important than idea, that has to be at the base of what our question is. Of course, it's okay for us to springboard into other ideas and talk about what we think is actually more important, but all of that discussion needs to come in reference to that original idea. And if we're going to say that there are all these things that are more important than whatever it might be, we need to have that discussion being brought about in relation to that original idea and why other things are more important to it. We can't just more important than it. We can't just look at it and say, well, all these things are more important, so I'm going to talk about those for the whole essay. You need to make sure that you understand that question and topic, and what we mean by that is that if a question has that strong topic like that, it has to be a part of our response and it has to frame our response. It can't just be something that we dismiss. And so, guys, they are the 6 questions that I've put together. But the one word that I want you to take out of this, that's my favorite word when it comes to essay writing, and that is ultimately. And it's not a trick that if you write the word ultimately in your essay, you're automatically going to do well. But if you're using the word ultimately, it means that you have looked at all of the ideas, all of the dynamics that exist within a text, and then at the end of it, you've got a point. And so the reason I love that word is because it sums up everything that I'm trying to do with today's video. that when we respond to essay questions, we need to show our knowledge, we need to show our understanding of the values, the ideas, the structural elements, all of those things of a text, but ultimately we've got to come to a response. I wish you all the best for your SAC or the exam or whatever it is that you're getting ready for right now. If you've enjoyed the video, please check out the rest of our channel and see which of the texts of yours that we've covered. I'd love to be able to help you out. If you've got any questions, you can put them down there in the comments. But until we see you next time, all the best with your studies and good luck.